Here with Manteo Commissioner Michael Basnight. Thanks for talking to me.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate it.
What an honor.
We are here at the Pioneer Theater.
Yes.
I'm going to let you tell us about the Pioneer Theater and your connection to the Pioneer Theater for those that don't know.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you. Let's see. Wow, that's a long story. It's first of all, it's been known as since its opening in 1918. It's recognized as the oldest family-owned independent theater in the United States, continuously running by a family. So therefore, it was never sold out to an AMC or an RC Theaters. So it's always been independent, which gives you a lot of freedom as a theater owner. The Griffith family, the Basnight family, we're some of those native folk who've been around forever. And so, of course, the family marriages and trees kind of intermingle throughout. But one of the cool stories is that my grandparents, they were affectionately known as Mose and Mabel Basnight. They spent their honeymoon in old man George Griffith's house up on North End. My great-grandfather, Manliff Holmes Basnight, built some of the state boat, the shad boat, this North Carolina state boat. He built some of those boats with him back in his early age. So we've just always been somewhat connected. And to skip forward, when the Griffith family decided to finally put the reels down, my sister Jamie Basnight Hatchell and I stepped in, and I had some ideas, and happy to share those. But it turned into, man, what a labor of love. There were some folks that wanted to tear it down, and of course you can't let something like the Pioneer Theater get torn down. But in my time living in Austin, Texas, and San Diego, and traveling the country, I had seen some iterations of historic classic theater renovations and how you modify to keep those, alive, really. And it's more than just movies. So that's really how we started promoting the idea to Buddy Griffith and his family, and they liked it, and the rest is history. Now we're on to still showing those classic movies, all those favorites, but with the addition of music and comedy. We've even got some plays coming back, but music has been, man, what a boom for an old place like this. And there's so many little idiosyncrasies to the Pioneer that just keep surprising you. But having someone like the Vice President of the Country Music Hall of Fame stand on the stage and say, you should record in here. The acoustics are like a recording studio. And then I asked Buddy Griffith why, and he goes, oh, that's easy, Michael, because the walls are 20 inches thick. It's like, wait, how much? But the first Pioneer Theater in 1918 burned by fire, like much of Manteo. Manteo is very practical in our history, but we've burned down at least 2 times. And they were worried about fire, and so when they were looking to restore the old theater 1 block over versus looking at a new option, talkie movies were coming out and they were becoming a thing. And so they were worried, from what I was told, about the sound with the walls. So they bought the plans for a theater, Art Deco 1934 style theater. But they're worried about the sound getting out, and they're also worried about fire again. So why not just double the width of the walls? And for us today, man, is that fantastic when it comes to sound. It's just about second to none.
Yeah, the acoustics are cool. I mean, I can just tell, sitting on the stage talking to you a little bit. Yeah. We were talking a little earlier before the interview about the serendipity with the lockbox. Can you tell that story?
Oh my gosh, yes. So in that time where my sister and I were in the lobby talking with Buddy, it was winter time. It was, I think, December. And he had just announced his intent to sell. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute, we can't let that get torn down. Surely there's a way. I'm promoting these ideas to him, sort of pitching him, if you will. I think you could do music. I think you could do comedy. And, I remember my aunt, LaBom, she wrote a play, Elizabeth R., and used the stage. I'm looking at some of the lines now. That's why my eyes are tarrying from where she had her stage set and props up. But I told Buddy, I was like, I think we could do music. He goes, that's what I would love. I really would love to get music in here. And as we were going over a few ideas, he said, I tell you what, Michael, why don't you and Jamie just think about it for a few days, and take the weekend, and I want you to come in and out of the theater. Just come walk around. And he said, I've got a lockbox outside that the service guys delivering popcorn or cups and stuff they'll use this lockbox, and they can get in the day in case if I'm not here. And he said, I'm going to give you the code. Now I've replaced this box since then, so I'm not putting myself in jeopardy. But he said, I'll give you the 4 numbers. And as I asked you earlier, you want to guess what those 4 numbers were? How about the last 4 to my Social Security number? That's kind of crazy.
That's insane. If that's not a sign, I don't know what
I
is.
told that story to Jamie Johnson, the singer, and he was like, that's it, Michael, you were supposed to buy it at that point. So it was kind of a done deal over a lockbox and 4 numbers.
There's just certain things that you have to follow. And you did some renovations. How was the renovation process? Did you guys enjoy that? Or?
Ooh, that was a lot of fun. I mean, probably
a lot of work too, I'm sure.
It was definitely. It pays to have construction in the family to be able to get at some of this. The town was very gracious in working with us, and we just had nothing but support from locals. I'm known for drawing pictures. It's in my head. I see it. I'm drawing it out. So we had a lot of drawings on rendition. But the first thing was we went upstairs with Buddy, and I had a crew of folks with us, and my sister, and I had never seen the windows. As you go up to the projector room, there were these 3 historic-looking windows, and I asked, where do they go? It doesn't make sense because the front was the English Tudor. And Buddy said, well, those just go out over the old marquee. We actually use them sometimes during parades to go out and open up the front, and we'll wave a flag or something like that. And so I stuck my phone out there, and lo and behold, along the front, right as you went through the window and you turned your camera around, the whole front of the building had this beautiful blonde brick. I'd never seen that. The side of the building has red brick. So how cool was it to see this brick? And then there were these chains with stars from the Art Deco period hanging down that looked to be attached to the top of the old marquee. And they had just boxed in with that English Tudor look. In the early 70s, we were it was a jubilee, and we were hoping to get the Queen to come from England over and visit Manteo. So the Board of Commissioners and a lot of the business owners and residents had all come up with the idea that we'll put a lot of English Tudor around town where we can. You'll see the town hall currently still has it, to try to see if we can't make her feel welcome. So in renovating, that was the first thing to come off. So tearing that off, seeing that brick was that was pretty amazing. We ended up working with North Carolina State Brick Historical team to figure out how to bleach those back safely and not damage the mortar or the bricks, and so we took a lot of care for that. Actually won an award through Main Street USA for facade restoration. So that was kind of neat. That's to cool. See that we were recognized and taking the time. The marquee, again, everything just keeps happening in a way that's so cool and so Manteo and Outer Banks style. We couldn't find a marquee because, unfortunately, when we ripped the bricks off, those chains attached to just the top. The marquee with the lettering that you see now, that was all gone. The vertical Pioneer sign was gone, damaged in a storm. But the brackets were still there. So Ricky Scarborough Boat Works down in Wanchese, he and I grew up together, college roommates at East Carolina. One of his employees, Joey Andreessen, works the CNC fabrication machine, and the two of them came up with an idea that they thought they could recreate that iconic vertical sign in some of the trim around the horizontal marquee. And then, of course, we had Jose. He did all of our work, and he was able to build that. He used to work for Davis back in the day, Davis Boat Works. And so Jose Ramirez was able to build the horizontal marquee in a matter of days, and all for a fraction of what it would have taken had we found a group out of Raleigh, or I was even looking in Texas for marquees. So it was done by locals.
Yeah, the way it was supposed to happen.
And just like that.
Yeah.
It was really, really neat.
That's cool.
So
that's
kind
very
of full
cool.
circle. The garden outside, That was always just an empty parking lot. My time living and working in Austin, Texas, there's a lot of, any outdoor space has the lights hanging over, it has grass, it has places to sit, cornhole games, things to enjoy outside. And so I thought, I've seen that it worked well. Let's see if we can do it here. And then, you make space for food trucks to come through. And then I was also dreaming of a performer large enough in one of their big Prevost tour buses, and so they would need power and a place to plug in, and then that to get the green room. And so designing the green room from an old storage dump, and I think we'll get to see that in a moment. So that was a lot of fun, and that has turned out extremely well. And so you'll see the signatures on the wall from the performers. And then the back 3 rows in the theater, I get asked about that a lot. Part of the pioneer is you remember your first movie. It was your first movie, it was your first date, it was your first handhold on a date. It was the first time you met someone. There's just so many cool memories. But growing up, the back 3 rows of the theater were the teenagers. We were too cool. We hung out back there. When you're 10 years old, 8 years old, you want to sit in the very front row for a movie, and you're looking straight up. It's kind of crazy. But the back 3 rows for the teenagers, and those seats were in need of repair. And there's another place called the Continental Club that I had frequented and see live music, and they had a little elevated seating area that was in the back, and you were kind of eye level with the performers. And so the way this theater is with sloping seats. I figured out, and I drew it all out, and everybody was laughing at me, but that we've elevated to be the VIP section for concerts. Now you can sit there for movies too, but it's just perfect for a music venue or comedy, and that's our VIP section for those events, and it sells out first every time. So it's been a lot of fun kind of putting all this together piece by piece, and really seeing how they all play well together, which is how, when we do events and functions and corporate retreats at the Pioneer, that's why we've modified the lighting for the performers and also for corporations. You'll have the outside garden as your break, your food truck for lunch, maybe a mixer or happy hour at the end of the day. We've got a stage out there for live music, or someone can talk about what's coming next for the organization, or a speaker, if you will. But the inside of the theater then becomes your place for a corporate retreat and your symposia. So we've had chairs like this on the stage, and lecterns on either side for the Tourist Bureau, and it seems to work out well.
Well, what you've done is you've created a whole vibe out of it. Yeah. It's more than just a theater. It's a thing. It's an event. It's a place where you want to be, and the public has received it very well.
That's been the most rewarding of all. Seeing an idea, writing it down on paper, seeing a marquee come to life, or a green room come together, or the garden, come together the way it did with the grass. But it's the smiling faces. It's the enjoyment. It's someone's in here watching a movie, but you walk outside on a First Friday, for example, and it's packed with folks who are just enjoying live music and vendors. And so I truly think that's been the most rewarding.
And all this had to start from somewhere. So tell me about your childhood. Tell me about those Basnight roots and what it was like growing up and where exactly you grew up and everything. Okay.
Yes, so the Basnights, most of us are here. There's some that went to other areas. I even saw one in California, some are in Florida, but our family, and I say our family, that's Basnight, that's Tillett, that's Meekins, that's Daniels, Midget, some Etheridge. We've kind of been around since the boat, I'll say. But what an honor and experience that was. So I grew up, my father, Jimmy Basnight, and Lily Basnight, now Roland. There were 4 of us growing up, and now I've got 3 more siblings, so there's 7 of us in total. I grew up just north of Mother Vineyard. So if you're going north, right where the stoplight is, that turns into the middle school. Manteo Middle School is there now. And if you turn right, that would be Mother Vineyard, north entrance. Just keep going north, and the road makes a turn to the left, that sharp left-handed corner. My house is over in the right, and I loved it. I used to have a track. I probably drove everyone crazy. I know I drove poor Mr. Quentin Bell nuts. I used to race motocross when I was young. Even raced and was sponsored by Honda and nationally ranked. So I had a little motocross career when I was young.
What age was this?
I got my first bike at 5, up until I think it's 15, maybe right at 16. I was in that era when I went on to football and baseball and cars and things like that.
Okay.
You find out about girls and the motorcycle starts to get less exciting. But I was also at a level where I was racing all around, and so it took a lot of time. I had a little track out front that just went round and round, and that's how I started. And there was one little jump that was made of wood. And then in the back of our house, there's about an acre that my grandfather Mose used to have a big garden, and I'd go practice back there. And then as things started elevating, my practice track behind the Foodorama now, there's the houses behind Foodorama. All of that before it was built was my track. There used to just be a big oval where local kids would ride motorcycles around and around. And we finally got Mr. Chesley Midget, gave us approval. And so Basnight Construction Equipment's out there, and I'm building jumps and turns and whoops and everything you would need to be prepared for whatever track you were going to go race on. So
wow,
that was awesome. But I think back about it now and I go, God, imagine going into the grocery store and you get this obnoxious going around. But I wouldn't change a thing. I broke a lot of bones, tore knee up, but I would do everything exactly the same again. I learned so much about that. You know, it's one of those things where you play sports like baseball and football and basketball, surfing. Motocross was intense because, you're on this bike, you're going 60, 70 miles an hour, you're in the air, and you're always on Occam's razor of there being completely in control and completely out of control and wiping out. So it was kind of an interesting adrenaline fix, I'll say.
Yeah, and you feel like that taught you a lot that you used throughout your life.
Well, it did, really. You learn most when you're a little bit uncomfortable. And you certainly grow and develop from that respect. I talk to my daughters about that a lot. But I did see that, you sort of push yourself a little bit. In a career, my career after college, after East Carolina, was in medical device, and it was cardiac. And so I'm in the operating room with surgeons, heart surgeons, and you're in life or death situations all day, and you're working in people's hearts and chest. And I sometimes thought, I don't think I would have had a career other than this after all of that motocross and stuff early on. It just kind of sets you in a path of intensity, maybe.
Do you feel like it expanded your comfort zone to the point where you could be comfortable with a more serious situation like that?
100%. 100%. You're not as shaken by things. I won't say that I don't get shaken at all, but I think you're able to focus a little bit because again, that motocross thing, you're one little move and you're completely wiped out. So
yeah,
but it was fun. I had a good time. Charles Haywood was my riding partner and like a brother that I didn't have at the time, and we went all over the country. It was awesome.
That's cool.
So I grew up there in Manteo on North End. Attended all the way through here in Manteo, and graduated high school in 1990. I played sports, mostly football and baseball. As a catcher at the end of my time in baseball, and football as outside linebacker, and played a little bit of receiver, but I wasn't as good on that one, I don't think. I wasn't too slow, but I was better on defense.
Did you ever use your position as catcher to get some shots in that were receipts from football season, maybe with some people that were playing football? I feel like my catcher in high school always did that.
He was a little bit close to the leg.
Yeah.
Maybe. Maybe. Yes. But I really enjoyed that. But again, I think, the role of a catcher or outside linebacker are able to see things, and you're kind of involved in every little bit aspect of the game and not just one role so much. And I tend to enjoy that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tend to enjoy that.
So then after school, you went to college. What happened between college and when you moved to Texas? What was life kind of like then?
So I went to East Carolina. Had a great experience with, surprised I didn't know who he was, but it was the dean of ECU, who I was walking around trying to do a self-guided tour, and this cat walked me through campus, Chancellor Aiken, and was so nice to me and just so, appropriate. And then at the end, it finds out he knows my family. He's like, "Oh, I know Manteo, I know you guys."
He didn't know that ahead of time?
No, but he was so generous, and I went home and I was like, "I know where I'm going to school. I'm going to East Carolina." We've had a lot of family that went there. My grandmother went there, Mabel, when it was still East Carolina Teaching College. And so I graduated East Carolina, and my degree was in industrial technology with a distribution concentration. That's now the School of Technology and Engineering.
Okay. So
you were about a semester shy of civil engineer, and 2 semesters or so shy of electrical engineer. But you were using technology to try to solve problems, challenges. And that's growing so quickly that caught my attention, and I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew at the time, you're talking 1995, so a cell phone was still a bag phone pretty much, and not everyone had laptops or computers at home, and if it was a family shared thing. So I just saw it catapulting, and the one downside is that there was really nothing around Greenville, and certainly nothing out here in our tourism-driven engine on the Outer Banks, where I could step right into something that deep into technology. I started looking at selling construction equipment, Caterpillar, and I was starting to talk with them, and had come home to work for Basnight Construction, which, that's how I paid for college and grew up. There was no question. You were going to work. So that, and working in RVs and Owens, and I was just trying to interview. And Mr. Keith Fearing, who used to be the pharmacist in town, Malcolm Fearing's father, he and my grandparents, Mose and Mabel, were just best friends, lived across the street from each other for years. And he said, I had asked him, any advice on how to get into this medical device industry. I say medical device industry with technology because I have to take a step back. When I was trying to decide what to do, I remember talking with Aunt Cormay Basnight. She lived right next door to Basnight Construction office, and she came over all the time, would talk to my mom or my dad, and she was telling me about her pacemaker, and she was a character. Everybody knows that. I mean, she was so much fun. But for her, someone you look up to and love, to say that if it wasn't for this device, I wouldn't be alive, it kind of catches your attention. And so after college, I was trying to get into a technology industry, but I was really kind of laser focused on this pacemaker, defibrillator industry. She would tell me that she wasn't so fond of her doctor, but she really loved the company guy that was there. She said, "Michael, he was in surgery, and he and the doctor were talking. Try this, use that." And she was like, I could hear them. A pacemaker, you're not always put to sleep completely. And so I thought, wow, I don't have to go to medical school, but I can do something, as there's this word intensity again, with life or death and this technology, and it's really cutting edge, and the guys seem to be making good money, but they love what they do, from what she's saying. And so I was trying to get in the industry. Mr. Keith Fearing was helping me because of his family experience in the pharmaceutical industry, and he actually brought his niece's husband. He used to work for a pharmaceutical company. I went and I sat. I came all dressed up in a suit. I wanted to impress this man. and talked about why I was passionate with technology, and I was really sort of focused on the medical industry, and I told the story of Aunt Cormay. And he said, I don't know if I can help introduce someone like you to the pacemaker industry. I'm more on the drug and clinical trial side, but it wouldn't hurt to start there and learn a little bit about the industry and the hospitals and the physicians and the different levels of care. And so I started looking at that area, and actually I was barefoot in a ditch, putting in a drain system right at the ferry docks in Hatteras. When I get a guy from one of the construction crews, and he walks over and he says, "Hey, you're Michael, right?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "There's a guy on the phone for you in the trailer, where your office is called. You're supposed to call him." And it was a fellow by the name of Nelson Costa. I looked up to him a lot, but he worked for Abbott Labs in Chicago. And so I did a phone screening with him, and then it turned into another 2 or 3 screens, and then they flew me out, which talking about being a fish out of water. Flew me to Chicago, picked me up in a limousine, took me into the corporate office. Abbott Park has its own zip code. It's massive in northern Chicago. And that's how I got my start. I was told, if you'll come to Chicago for a year and a half, we're under a sort of a pilot program in marketing. And so my first job was in marketing for a pharmaceutical company. But we were trying to see if it was better for the customer and the patients to continue the same path, or to go on to TV and radio and try to reach the customers and physicians that way, because some of these areas didn't have sales reps, and some the physicians wouldn't let sales reps in or marketing folks in. Easily understood. And so I did my year and a half living in Evanston, and then they liked what I was doing, and I got an opportunity to go either in Raleigh, and I don't tell this story often because it'd make my mother upset, but I had a chance to take a sale. They wanted to push you to the field to learn the sales trade and marketing in the field with the customers, because we were doing it all from the corporate office. Very little in the field. Most of it was over conference calls with key areas. And so it was either Raleigh or San Diego. And I knew a friend in San Diego and all the motocross racing and stuff out there, and so I thought, I can always come home, because at that age you're dying to get somewhere else. Outer Banks gets real small. You're related to everybody. You know all the same people. You want to go see the world. So I, after Chicago, went west. That's the part I don't tell my mom. I could have come close to home a lot sooner. That was in '96. And so I was in San Diego in '97, and I stayed with Abbott for about 4 more years. And I was lucky. I had some success there and got to travel the world for some programs and some awards and things like that, to be able to go to Greece and Italy and different countries, kind of set in a thirst for, wow, there's a lot to see. And there's a lot of differences, and man, we all appreciate the same things, no matter where you go. It's just a different version. And so I enjoyed that, but the opportunity came up for my pacemakers in the defibrillator industry and heart valve industry. And I don't know where it came from, but all of a sudden I had 3 offers to go to leave the pharma world, and I was top percentage of the field folks, leave that behind and start all over again. 2 of them were just standard corporate roles, one with Medtronic and one with Boston Scientific. And then there was a distributor role, which is entrepreneur. And I said I was doing okay there. I had a good salary, and had bonuses, and I had a company car, and I don't know what happened. Maybe the old motocross shook something loose, but I took the distributor role. No salary. And I took a territory that hadn't been touched, represented. None of the heart surgeons knew anything about St. Jude Medical for at least 8 years dormant. So I had a little uphill climb. And but man, did it turn out. They had the best technology at the time, and I got to work with some of the world's best heart surgeons. That was just fantastic. You get absorbed in the company, and then you're the area manager, and then the regional manager, and then we moved our corporate headquarters into Austin, Texas. So I was in San Diego for about 17 years, down in Point Loma, married, 2 beautiful daughters. And then the fellow who had hired me was about to become CEO of St. Jude Medical, thus moving the company to the center of the country, he said. And it was to be a 2 to 3 year deal. Basnight, I want some of you distributors to come in and help us sell the company the way you sold your businesses. So you understand the surgeons, the patients, because if you don't sell the pacemaker or defibrillator, you don't get paid. So you're looking for every opportunity to make that connection and help that physician see why this solution might be the best one for their patients. And so that I took the opportunity, and then that turned into a director role in Austin, and then it was an international role, and I took whatever they gave me because I wasn't sure if that was going to work out. The handshake deal, I greased the skids a little bit. I had he and his wife set up for Outer Banks vacation. I didn't pay for it, but I introduced them everywhere to go. They stayed in Duck and went to Owens for dinner and Basnight's Lone Cedar. I was telling him, if I get the chance to go out in the field from Austin as a vice president of something, then I want to go to the eastern region if possible. If not, send me back to California. Everything was going great, but we ended up getting acquired by Abbott, almost $50 billion deal. So the top executives went away, nice shiny new cars, and I'm still in Austin. New company I started with right out of college, so I knew them well. And I stayed there for another couple of years, and then my oldest daughter actually chose NC State for her university, and so I started a consulting company and took a buyout, and I had to sit on the bench for about 16 months. And but that gave me time to think, really, and what my next endeavor or challenge might be. And so I started consulting, and then I took a job as a vice president for a company out of Raleigh, and that was a virtual telehealth company. I had seen the mental health component of healthcare my whole career. There's something about a patient who sits there, it's got heart failure, and they have a pacemaker, and it's fine, I've got a little heart failure, it's no problem. To then it progresses to the point where we've done multiple iterations to their device, added features, leads in the heart, and it's not getting any better. And you see the patient then, instead of joking around, I got this heart failure thing, they're in tears when you walk in the room to program them, check their pacemaker, and it's, I'm not ready to go. My family's not ready for this, and can you guys help me? They sort of become their condition. And so it's the elephant in the room. We're doing everything we can from the device side and the medications, but you're not really helping what's scaring them the most in some cases. And so that made that transition to a telehealth virtual mental health company rather easy. I had about a year contract with them, and through it all, I always had a home or a second home here on the Outer Banks. I mean, I wanted my daughters to know that they were bi-coastal. I wanted them to understand just how much family and the history here. I'm a huge history buff. It only increased as I got older. And so that transition back home just made sense. And again, like that lockbox, it just happened. And the next thing I know, I've got the Evans house under contract. It's 1871, and trying to figure out how to prevent that from getting torn down and turned into condos. And then 4-6 months later, the Pioneer happens, and now my oldest daughter has graduated North Carolina State, and my youngest daughter, Scarlett, just declared NC State. So for a pirate, that is a tough check to write, but I'm so proud of them. But yeah, it seemed to make sense.
So let's talk a little bit about your commissionership in Manteo. From what I understand, that was an appointed position. Is that correct?
Okay. It was.
What happened? It was the mayor was on the board and became mayor?
Correct, yes. So Commissioner Wickstrom had successfully run for and was appointed mayor, but that left her position open. And as has been done in the town of Manteo before, you can address it then or you can address it later, at which point there have been a lot of discussions on willingness to help and how can you contribute. And so there was a nomination and approval, and I was immediately on the diocese. So there I was.
So what was that like when you heard that you were going to be in contention for that? I mean, was it like, hey, we're thinking about asking you? Did they ask you ahead of time, or were you like,
yeah?
How did the consideration process happen?
I mentioned earlier being a bit of a history nerd and history buff, and obviously when you've got, a home like the Evans home and the Manteo house, and you're trying to figure out how to restore and save and share, and then the Pioneer, and so I had a lot of discussions with just residents and visitors and leaders alike on my perspective of Manteo and growing up here, what it was like. It was so fun, and I really cherished it the whole time I was away, and but had the chance to also see how other towns, cities were addressing population changes, migration, people moving in and out, and so it became a sort of constant question of, well, you're from here and you know it better, as good as anybody, and are you willing to help? Because there's always the need to help. Can you give back? There's a reason why you came back home, and I used to joke that the old ladies here, when you're born, they put a magnet in your butt somewhere. It's on your back. I don't know where it is, but at some point they're gonna turn that magnet on. You go think you're traveling the world, but when they turn that magnet on, you're coming home. But I think a lot of it is just to come home and see how you can help make sure that this generation of children and this generation of folks who are retired now have the same quality that our generations had growing up. The community here is unbelievable, and it always has been, and that honestly is the number one rated component in every request and survey. It's always the people. What do you like about the place? And it's not the style of the homes or this or that. It's the people who are so friendly. That's something to be proud of, because I can tell you I've lived and been other places where that wasn't the case. And so I was honored. A little apprehensive at first, just, okay, what are you going to get yourself into? But it's like we talked about earlier, you learn most from being a little bit uncomfortable. And I obviously have a long family history, because you kind of do whatever it takes to survive out here, and it might be taking a leadership role or an elected official role for a while. And so it just seemed to fit, and I was honored and certainly flattered with the way it turned out. But it's been great.
Is that something that had ever crossed your mind before, politics?
I didn't come home for that. And I see it everywhere. Uncle Mark, I told you, was such a legend to me before his political career, but it just, it was something that I always admired. I think a lot. I'm always thinking, and sometimes to my detriment. But that I see some of those who've been before me and those of us who are in roles now, and it took a lot to try to craft this unique space, this Outer Banks, and be able to share it and not lose it to other ideas. And it's really been fun. I've certainly enjoyed it. I see little things that are neat throughout the town that I took sort of for granted. Our boardwalks, our docks. I remember me and Vicki Basnight shoes off, gone after school was out. You're walking around barefoot in your bird wells and you're swimming off the docks. I learned to swim off that one dock that's out there right now where the dolphin boat is. There was only 2 really growing up. But I see that cross out on the point there by the gazebo on the waterfront. My dad was the one actually operating the excavator that's from the old school, the old high school, and he was breaking up the foundation, and Town Commissioner Jewel Burris was there. And he was like, "Oh, Jimmy, don't tear that up. We're going to use it." And my dad was like, "We're going to do what?" He said, "It came out in the shape of a cross for a reason. We'll use it for the town. It's a piece of history." And I just think now how cool, and to have the opportunity to try to sort of preserve what we can and tell the history, the true history of what we were. There's no need to glamorize it. We were hard workers, and just practical folks, and waterfront and fishermen, and it's meant to be shared with people. And I think that's what's drawing folks to Manteo now is, you work hard and you've got a week or 2 vacation, but especially coming out of COVID, if people are looking for something real, that's why live music is catching on the way it is. You want to get out, you want to be in something and experience it. And the beach is awesome. Our beaches have always been some of the best in the country. And I would say also some of the best in the world from that perspective. But there's something cool about crossing that bridge and getting to a historic town like Roanoke Island and Manteo, and walking the streets and hearing people greet each other and asking them where you're from and making suggestions. And it's definitely, it gets referred to as a studio-like town. Andy Griffith said if Mayberry was anywhere, it's Manteo. It's an honor to be able to try to help figure out the best ways to preserve and share it, so that, like I said, our young generation, our retired and older populations, and all of our visitors across the spectrum get to see just how awesome this place is.
You'd been serving kind of in other ways, adding to the community, and now you're doing it in a whole different kind of way. So that's
Yeah.
kind of cool. A way you never thought of.
No,
Right.
no, I never thought of that. I never thought I'd be Outer Banks Community Foundation member, and things are happening, and I feel like it's just leading me to make sure that I'm staying connected with folks and help.
You mentioned Andy Griffith, which has a huge connection to Manteo. You knew him.
Yes.
What was Andy like?
I thought he was awesome. He would come by. Again, his goal, he loved Manteo, and he wanted to get here and shed Beverly Hills and shed the Hollywood people, and he just liked to be here. And there's just pages and pages written about that. But his mail was delivered to Basnight Construction's little office over here on Agona Street, right up until COVID, I think. But what he loved to do was come by and pick up the mail and catch up on some gossip. Now, what's been going on, Jimmy? Or what's been going on, Mark? Or Miss Lily, my mom, or whoever was there. And Uncle Saint was a good friend to him, and Della and the like. But yeah, he was funny. He was passionate about this island and this place. And I remember that. I remember little things. His wife, Cindy, later in years, he got into collecting cars. He loved details. Everything mattered. I remember he had found he wanted to give her a 57 pink Thunderbird. But there were only 3 or 6 of them in the country that were made from Michigan, that had electric windows, power windows. And so he had to find special order to get that, and went through a lot of pains, but he was so happy with that, just kind of pieced it all together. It was a project for him, but I enjoyed him. We talked about the brick patio earlier. Did you want me to tell that story?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. When I was here in town, there's still a lot of brick sidewalks. And I had, working for my father and Uncle Mark, Basnight Construction, that was one of my summer jobs, was to work on these bricks. And I remember specifically in front of Tranquil House, putting those bricks down, just how hot it was. God, that was a hot summer. It's miserable. And it was sometime not long after that. I'm probably 15 years old, 14, 15 years old. And that was, a simple, benign job, just putting bricks down in a pattern herringbone or basket weave. And I came home and Dad said, boy, which that's my name, boy, we've got a job up at Mr. Andy's house. I said, okay, Dad, gosh, what are we going to do? I don't know, come on. It was in the afternoon. So we drove up to his house through the gate and went all the way back, and he had just done a really good job clearing out all of the undergrowth. And so the trees just, I remember, looked so cool. It looked like a forest or something. There was no briars and brush. It was just the trees. It was awesome. And as you drop down, Dad pulled over right as you turn right to go towards his house. And he said, I think it's right here. And I was like, what? And there was a tree, and underneath the tree, he had laid out a square. And there was a whole pile of bricks. And I thought, oh, Lord, here we go again. Bricks. I'll go ahead and put down more bricks. And so here comes Andy. He's got a zoot suit on, one of those with the little single zip. My Uncle Melvin Basnight used to wear them all the time. And he smelled like Skin So Soft. He had bear greased himself down for the mosquitoes. He's like, I don't like that spray. So he was using this Skin So Soft. And I thought, oh, Lord, what has he done now? And he said, he came out and started talking to us about what he wanted in this brick patio. And I remember asking him, I was like, why do you want, this patio? I'm just going to sit here and look at it. I'll just sit out here and enjoy it. Michael, you just got to sometimes just relax. Okay, all right. And then that's when I asked him about the Lost Colony. And I remember this conversation, why he joined. And he said, I was a music major in Carolina, and I heard about the amphitheater, and I learned how to project my voice, and it would help me as a singer. And he went through pains to tell me he was a singer, not an actor at the time. And then I asked him, you asked what he was like. I asked him, well, okay, that's cool. So that's why you got here, but why'd you stay? He said, he had a little twinkle in his eye. He had these glasses on, and he was had a cup of tea or something. And he said, well, I figured out that, I got out here and the play was at nighttime. And then all the actors would go out and they would dance and raise Cain at night after the play was over. But what I figured out is there were a bunch of young, good-looking women that were in the play, and they spent all day at the beach. So I figured I had found heaven. That's why I stayed. I think he just made a lot of friends, but he was a character. The specific to that story, though, is that brick patio. When he was just starting off, had no money, pennies to rub together, he lived in a little, what we'd call a tiny house today, and it's still there, but is behind my Uncle Bobby Owens and Sarah, their house. Before that was Clara May. And he lived back there, and as I got the story from RV, he and his buddies were back there dancing in the backyard, and they were tearing up the grass. And their answer to it when they were getting in trouble with Miss Clara May was to go get some bricks. Some building was getting torn down. They threw them in the back of somebody's truck, and they put a brick patio out there so they could dance and not tear everything up. And that was their way of fixing that, the dirt that they had created, the mud hole. I didn't know, Andy Griffith didn't tell me that those bricks meant that much to him. But a year ago, I was sitting in my house and RV was telling a story about Andy or something. And I don't know how, we were talking about where he lived in the house back behind Clara May's, and he said, his grandma's, he said, but when I was younger, in his 20s or something like that, he and a buddy were back there, and he did something with a shovel and cut through the grass. They were going to bury something or put a plant or something. and they hit this brick. And so they uncovered all this grass off the top of this brick patio that he never knew his whole life was there. And I guess Andy Griffith had found out about that and kept trying to buy these bricks. And Miss Clara May was messing with him and wouldn't let him have the bricks. And he was like, no, I want the bricks. They went back and forth and back and forth. So he finally was able to procure the bricks. And that's what he wanted them for. He wanted to put them up on his property underneath that tree and just be able to sit there and reflect. I think that's a cool story. And also one where he had a chance to tell me all of that when I was there with my dad building this patio, and he didn't say anything about it. But that was sort of the depth to his character. Now, yeah, he'd get grouchy with people when they'd ask him for an autograph and stuff because he just wanted to be a Manteo, or he didn't want to be Andy Griffith when he was here. But he did a lot of good for people. People didn't know about it. He gave a lot of money away. He supported a lot of people when they were sick, when they were down. He used the theater here even once. He premiered a couple of movies here, as you can see from that famous photo of him on that ladder, doing the Andy, as I call it. But he even used the stage here to rally folks to prevent a big chain grocery store from coming into town. I mean, Manteo has always been small. It's family, it's community. And so small businesses are really the fabric of who we are. And so to keep those big chains out of Manteo, it was fighting to preserve what we're really about and who we are. That Occam's razor comes back again. Once you allow one of those things to happen, who knows what happens to a town. And so that he was passionate about that. That was Andy.
Sounds like a great guy.
I thought so.
Michael Basnight, thanks for talking to me.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.